Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nitchman.
Our guest today is Kathie Glass, running on the Libertarian ticket for Texas governor, discussing with me today restoring sovereignty back to the people of the United States. Find out more about Kathie at kathieglass.org. Hi, Kathie Glass. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio for our Heartbeat of the World segment. I'm so grateful to have you out here today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show.
You betcha. I've been good friends now with Joshua, who connected us, and I'm so grateful for him sending me over some wonderful experts and people in the arena of politics and working to really help our country get back on its feet and be a country where all the people are served by our local, our federal, and our state level. Because we've kind of gotten away from that, where our federal government was meant to be servants to the people, and it's kind of got switched around. I see people kind of glorifying their senators and congressmen, kind of acting like they're some gods on a pedestal. And really, it was the other way around. The government was really presented to serve the people, and we've gotten away from that. But what I love about your platform is you are running for Texas governor, and you're looking to bring back liberty and freedom of people of Texas. And explain for our audience, because I didn't know what this was until I started paying more attention to politics. What is a libertarian as opposed to a Republican or Democrat?
Well, our party is based on a philosophy. The philosophy of libertarianism basically says you should be able to live your life however you want to, provided that you don't interfere with the same rights every other human being has. And so it's live and let live. And the government should be limited to to what the Constitution set out to accomplish. The government is there for a very limited purpose of assisting you in defending your rights when you're aggressed against. And so, courts and police and military, that sort of thing, but government doesn't do much else. Mm-hmm. And so we've gotten far away from that. What you said is true. Mm-hmm. We were set up under the Constitution that the states were sovereign and that the federal government was a servant. And the way the Constitution would be enforced was that states would be very jealous of any imposition, any attempt by the federal government to intrude on the rights of the sovereign states. Mm-hmm. But the states haven't done their job to enforce the Constitution and fight back against a federal bully. Mm-hmm. Our own governor in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, doesn't understand that he's the head of a sovereign state. He doesn't act like it. Mm-hmm. He doesn't enforce the Constitution. He doesn't protect Texas businesses against the many ways that the federal government intrudes on their ability to do business. He's a crony. Mm-hmm. He does business for his friends, and that's it. And it's a big club, George Carlin said, and you ain't in it.
Yeah, and he's so right. He was absolutely right about that. I think I told you before the interview that I had become myself a little disillusioned with the whole political system. And back when Bush took office the second time, I just said, I give up. That's it. I put up my hand. I ain't trying to vote no more. It doesn't help. And it wasn't until this past election where everyone seemed to have a strong opinion about what's right and wrong that I really started to get engaged, pay attention, listen to all the politicians. And as I said on my show before, I stopped turning on the talking news heads and just downloaded transcripts and let the actual people, candidates and such, tell me for themselves what they feel, what they think. And it really opened your eyes to really who's working for whom. And it's true. Explain for people what crony is, because that's thrown around a lot. And I see that kind of connected with the word capitalism, crony capitalism. That be a crony means that you just like to steal money from the poor little people and you're all about me, me, me. What does crony really mean?
I don't use the phrase crony capitalism because what I'm seeing has nothing to do with capitalism. Capitalism is just where an honest businessman just wants to have a level playing field and to keep government out of his business so he can compete in the free market. But cronyism is where well-connected people, special interests, that get things through government, power, wealth, influence that they never could get through the free market. I'll give you one example that our governor did recently that it illustrates he is a crony. We had a bill passed in the legislature that said that craft brewers would have to pay to use the services of the beer distributors, the liquor distributors, even if they didn't use their services. Now, the craft brewers are very haven't been around a long time in Texas, but they're very popular and they're growing, and they do lots of on-site sales, and they don't need a distributor. But the liquor distributors are very politically well connected. They're like automobile dealers. They have lots of clout. They're super cronies, and that bill passed. It's basically a protection racket for the distributors. And Governor Abbott allowed that bill to become law. He didn't veto it as he should have. Now, that's just one example of how cronies get things through government, and through a governor that is their friend, that is also a crony, that the free market would never allow them to have.
Yeah. And it's so alarming to me. And more I'd seen something that I mentioned on the show a long time back. There's now laws passed in Florida where they really are kind of not allowing citizens to like grow fruits and vegetables in their own yard. Because if they do, well, then, we're going to shut it down. It's against the law. How is it against the law? It's your property. And I think that's one thing we've mentioned in the past, that the so-called property rights that were supposed to be granted to citizens have been null and void by property taxes and by the government stepping in and overreaching, saying when we can and can't do. Have you seen that happen as well on your side in Texas?
Well, we've seen it. We've heard about it in other places. Like, you can't collect rainwater on your own property. Well, that's not going to fly in Texas. But they're doing things like you can't hand out food to the homeless or the needy. You can't give away food. You have to have a license and a kitchen and all this stuff. We've seen that, and we've beaten it back for the most part. But they're always trying. We talked about the broken two-party system. My motto is Washington is broken and the two-party system is corrupted by cronies, cronyism, special interest. Yeah. And you see this in different ways coming at you that you may not recognize because they're in both parties. It's like you have a baseball team, a baseball game, and half the people on your bench is on the other team.
Yeah.
And so the team that you're fighting against, half of them are on the bench you're sitting on, half of them are on the other bench, and they're wearing different uniforms, but they're working together, and you don't know it. It's not obvious. You have to ferret it out. So that's why I say avoid the two-party system, because you don't really know who you're supporting or what they stand for. You know what they say. Yeah. They campaign like libertarians, but then they govern for the cronies. Yeah. And Trump's success has illustrated this. He is a man without a party. Yes. His own party, the Republicans, are his worst enemy. Yeah. So what does party politics mean anymore? Exactly. So that's why I say don't stay the course with a proven failure of a two-party system. Come chart a new course with us. Kathie Glass for Texas Governor and the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you say that, Kathie, because when I was watching the debates, I remember Trump, they were asking him, President Trump, hey, if it ended up going, this is before they actually chose the nomination for the Republican Party. They asked him if he would switch parties. And he said, well, yeah, if I need to. And, or, something to that effect. Like, well, I'll do what I have to do to win. And they're like, oh, look at him. He's dissing his own party. And I'm like, the people listening, I'm like, why are you worried about what team? You should be worried about, is this person fighting for me? Is his platform something that will benefit the people? Not, oh, will he switch teams? This is not, I kept telling people I was talking to on the street, this is not voting for your favorite ball game or your favorite team member. This is so important. This affects our lives, people. Don't pick your favorite team member. Forget both of those teams, as you said. Go to a different direction. And when I said to people, hey, how about you don't vote for Republican or Democrat this coming term? How about you just vote something completely, oh, if I do, then my vote will go to one of the other two people, maybe the person I hate most, because I hear people say, oh, it's better if one of the two evils, so I'll just make sure I vote for the one less evil, so that if I vote for a Libertarian or Green Party, then I'll just lose my vote. And I said, well, not if we all don't think like that, it won't be like that. But you all have to make a decision that I'm not going to vote the two parties. What's your take?
Our liberty is dying. Our country is dying.
Yes.
Does it really matter to you if all that you care about dies under the watch of someone that you hate a little bit less than the other person? That's not important.
Mm-mm.
And it won't change. How does it change? I ask people all the time, this thing that you are hating, how does it change? Well, it starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that you have the most control over is you. Focus on you and change you. Don't participate in what you hate anymore. Mm-hmm. Because if you vote for something that you hate a little bit less than the other option that you have bound yourself with, mm-hmm. How does it interpreted? Your one vote matters most as a signal to the world for what you want, what you believe in. And if you vote for something you know you don't want, whose fault is it when that is interpreted as you want the status quo? You don't want things to change. You told the world that, and so it's on you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting, when I sit down one-on-one with people, I could tell they're not happy with the direction the country is going in, but they kind of feel like I had, that really you can't make much of a difference. But I say, if we keep saying that to ourselves, if we all keep sitting here like throwing up our hands, then things keep dying and we keep sitting there complaining behind closed doors and nothing happens. But if we all stand up and say, yes, we can make a difference, and not just in a march on a Saturday somewhere in your city, but really by taking a stand and voting, all of us coming together and saying, we're not voting for this two-party system, we're done with it, it's outie. And I think the one good thing that Trump's election proved is that, hey, we do have power, because guess what? We voted someone who's a popular person who is not the status quo. And so I think it was the greater part of the country finally saying, we're done with the status quo. Yes.
In Texas, we have a saying, no retreat, no surrender. That's from our Alamo days. Oh. And so I never stopped voting because I thought that was a retreat. That was a surrender. And I'm not going to do that. And so that's just a principle. We'll never give up fighting. Politics is the arena where our liberties are being lost. You may not care about politics, but politics cares about you. You'll be governed by the choices made in the political arena, whether you participate or not.
That's true.
So stay in the fight. Don't leave the field. You leave the field, you leave the game, and we can't afford that. Mm-mm. But there's other things that we can do. Let me point out that if we can make the Libertarian Party competitive, then we make it a three-way race. What does that do to the numbers? It means you can get into office with, say, 34% of the vote. Doesn't have to be 51% or whatever. Several people in Texas, we've had governors elected with 39% of the vote when we had competitive 3- and 4-way races. And in the president, we've had, Bill Clinton and others got into office with less than 50%. But what does that do for liberty? Well, it makes things more reachable. Yeah. It makes your objectives, your goal posts that you have to meet. It's easier to get 34, 37% of the vote than it is to get 50%. And so just putting in a third option makes it more achievable that you will get liberty. I wanted to put in a plug for a friend of mine who's running for governor of New York, a libertarian, Larry Sharp. His name describes him very well. He's very articulate, and I think he'd be a great guest on your show.
Oh, I got to give him a call because we are broadcasting out of New York, and we need to get him in office so we can shift some things around here and get it working for the people. And you've talked about an overreaching government, and I don't think a lot of folks understand exactly what that means. The Founding Fathers knew very well what this means, and whereas a lot of people are not taught the Constitution in school. We were, but a lot of kids today don't know what it is. They think it's this old, outdated document by a bunch of white people. But they don't realize that the Founding Fathers knew the dangers of an overreaching government could turn into a kingdom, like what they left in Britain. And they didn't want that. And that is why they created the Constitution to lay out the way our government would be run. How has it gotten so far and now become overreaching? What is your take on that?
Well, it controls almost every aspect of our life. There's not a day goes by but that the federal government doesn't do things that should be done by the states, if at all. Most of the things they do shouldn't be done at all. And the Constitution very specifically and narrowly defines the powers of the federal government. And then it says there's anything else that they didn't mention is reserved to the states or to the people. Well, no document will enforce itself, and no one has enforced the Constitution. It's like having a speed limit sign or a no smoking sign. It doesn't prevent smoking or speeding. Someone has to enforce it to get it, and they're not doing it. It's up to the states to do this. And our Texas governor thinks that going to the federal government, suing in federal court, asking for permission to act like the sovereign that you are, is standing up to the feds. It's not. And he's tried that for decades, and it hasn't worked. And the founders knew it wouldn't work. The Supreme Court is not our supreme ruler. The Supreme Court is not given the constitutional authority to declare what is constitutional and to have the be the sole arbiter of what is constitutional. So the feds have filled a vacuum that the states have allowed to be created. Let's just look at the Texas business and what they have to endure under an out-of-control federal government. The EPA, OSHA, I mean, you can go on and on and on. They're all unconstitutional. And a Texas governor would say, you're not going to enforce that unconstitutional law in Texas. And if you attempt to do so, you will be violating Texas law more than likely, and we will arrest you for that. So don't do it. That's why I say don't sue the Buzzards. Arrest them.
Yeah, I love
arrest them for violating the Constitution and Texas law.
And
that's what a governor should do to protect the business and the property of Texas citizens.
Yeah, absolutely. And any governor, any state should be doing the same thing. I love that you say, don't sue the Buzzards, arrest them. Because what do Buzzards do? They kind of swarm around dead bodies. And that's what they're looking for. No, it's true. They swarm around dead bodies waiting to sleep in and start eating it. And that's what these little buzzards in Capitol Hill are trying to do, to destroy the Constitution of the United States and liberty and swoop in and eat what's left and then divide it up between each other. I don't think so.
At least the buzzards didn't kill you.
That's right. They're just waiting for you to die.
That's right.
But I often said to my boyfriend, how has it gotten to the point where we as states have even allowed unconstitutional bills and laws and policy to come into effect without even standing up and saying, whoa, that's not freedom-based, that's not for the people, and that's against the Constitution. Why have we even allowed it? I mean,
now, Trump has done some things. He has taken care of business as he could with reversing federal executive orders and sending things back to Congress that were really Congress's job to do, if at all. So he's done some good things along those lines, but it's not enough. And he can only do so much as president.
That's right.
Well, when something's already been passed and is a law, then the states have to step in and say, no, you're not doing that in our state. So we are falling down on the job, even though I do appreciate the efforts that Trump has made to get rid of some of the bad stuff.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that too, because each executive part of the executive, the legislative, and all the three branches of our government can only do what they can do, but they've got to work together, and each citizen has to work together. You can't just wait for your local congressman, senator, governor, president to do everything, and you just sit back and wait for things to happen. It's got to be that everyone takes an initiative and a part in making things come to be. And I think what's happened, it is kind of a lull of we've become letting the government, the federal government in particular, be our daddy. And that's dangerous, because at this point we're all taking a back seat saying when things don't work out, we'll just complain at home instead of going to make an active difference ourselves.
I agree. And so that's why I say we need a leader to lead this, and the head of the sovereign state needs to show leadership. But it doesn't stop there. We need constitutional county sheriffs who will enforce the Constitution. They're the chief law enforcement officer, the only one voted on by the citizens, and they need to take a stand too. Some do and some don't. But we need a culture, a change of a mindset about what is the proper role of the federal government and the state government. We need to change our minds. And again, I go back to what's the easiest thing for you to change? You.
Mm-hmm.
Work on your own mindset and get it fixed right, and then try to affect the people that you come in contact with every day, your family, your friends, your fellow church members, whoever you come in contact with. Try to persuade them and show them that we have to change course, and here's the course we should take.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think a good place to begin, now I started in my 20s, I thought I was very much into politics. I was a Democrat, and I would march and for a lot of social issues. And I thought I was aware. And it wasn't until the last couple of years I started to look at things around me and said, I'm not happy with them. And I think it started, like you said, starting with you, but it started with me educating myself, kind of looking around me, seeing what's working, what's not working, why is it not working, really, and not just turning on the local news at night for them to fill me in and tell me what's not working and why from their perspective, but reading, asking people, questioning, being curious, all of those things. And like you said, if everyone takes their part to say, what can I change about me? What can I learn to see things around me and learn what's not working and why, and what can I do to make a difference?
We're bombarded with technology, and we're getting news all the time, everywhere we go, whether we're on Facebook or just on the internet, it's coming at you very hard. But that doesn't negate the necessity for you to think for yourself and you to seek out information. In fact, I think it's just the opposite, because you're being hit with all this things that you didn't choose. You need to be wary. Am I just being fed just one side, or fake news? So you have to be well grounded in what you think, what you believe, what you perceive reality to be, what you perceive the problem to be, so that you're not just taken for granted and you don't just go along with what you're being fed.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Now, we've heard a lot in the news and what's been broadcast everywhere, a lot of animosity one way or another about the idea of immigration. What is your take on the immigration policy as it stands now and sanctuary cities?
Well, we have a broken immigration system. I'm for a welcoming immigration policy and a secure border. We can have both. We don't need to choose. So I would take control of and act like the sovereign citizen state we are in Texas, and craft our own made for Texas guest worker program. Immigration is not in the Constitution as a federal function. Naturalization is, but not immigration. And in times past here in Texas and in New York, before the days before Ellis Island, the states handle their own immigration. And yes, we should have certain rules about, we want people to come, but we want you to have a way to sustain yourself, a job. We want you to agree to not take taxpayer-funded services. We want you to agree to abide by our laws and our rules, like if you get a driver's license and other things. We want you not to have a communicable disease or have terrorist ties or a criminal background. But once you have passed those tests, which should be pretty simple, really, then you're free to come and go. And I'm focused on the southern border with Texas, and it's mostly Mexican citizens, but it's anybody really who wants to come and go at ease, at will, because I call it the needle in the haystack theory. Our problem on our border here in Texas is we have a whole lot of people coming across who really just want a job to feed their family, but because the immigration system is broken, they can't do it the right way. Well, we fix that and have a way that they could come through the legitimate ports and entry points. Because when they come across the border in other ways, they act like a haystack that disguises the needles. The needles are the bad guys. They're not coming here to feed their family. They're coyotes, they're drug smugglers, they're terrorists, they're a whole host of bad guys who wouldn't use an open system even if it was easy to do so. But we take away the haystack, then the needles are exposed for who they are, and we can take care of them much better, faster, quicker.
I love that, Kathie. And I think it was easier prior, because when we did have places like Ellis Island, for one, there was probably a lot less immigrants coming into the country than there are today. Today we have airplanes flying about. I mean, people can go all over the world much more easily than you could during Ellis Island when you had to take a boat ride that took a month to get here or something. I mean, my great-grandma came here and she was checked out at Ellis Island. She wasn't just let loose into the States, and she had to, probably go through a number of questions and tests and whatever, make sure you don't have any diseases and such and all that good stuff. But, and now people act like, oh, to vet people is kind of evil. And I'm like, well, no, would you just open your door and say, leave it unlocked and let any stranger come in and sleep on your couch? I would think not. You would protect the safety of your home and make sure anyone comes in is quote unquote vetted, that you check them out, make sure they're safe to be around your children and your family. And that's all that really conservatives are asking, that we all keep it safe. And I think honestly, and there's one libertarian that came on my show a couple months ago said, really at the end of the day, that's what both sides want. People that consider themselves more left-leaning or right-leaning. We all want the same thing in the United States. We want to be safe, but we also want to let people come and enjoy the wonderful freedoms that are offered in the United States.
I will tell you a couple of things about Texas and our borders. It's different from other states, even on the southern border. One is our boundary with Mexico is the Rio Grande River, and that's why there won't be a wall built in Texas on the border. You can't build a wall down the middle of a river. You can't put it on the Mexico side. That's an act of war. You're not going to put it on our side and deprive our citizens of the wondrous benefits of the Rio Grande River. So there's not going to be a wall. Also, second thing, that doesn't mean we can't secure the border. We just do it a different way. And I think the wall is actually a metaphor or a symbol of securing the border. But also in Texas, almost all of the border is private property. There's a little sliver in the Big Bend Mountains that's federal, but otherwise it's private property. And so you're not going to take away private property for a wall that they don't want. People who live on the border want a secure border, and they don't want a wall because they know it will be an impediment. But so Texas governor, though, is the commander-in-chief of our Texas military, which includes the State Guard, National Guard, and Air National Guard. And so I've always said, use the State Guard, which is under the total control of the governor. Even the legislature has no say in how the governor uses his State Guard. Put them on the border to help the private property owners whose land is being trespassed on and trashed and vandalized. Give them some assistance that they and their local law enforcement need. And that's the way we secure the border in Texas, a very fluid and flexible, boots on the ground approach. And I also would make the State Guard our number one disaster relief team. We don't need FEMA coming in or any part of the federal government coming in, helping us out with various disasters, whether it's hurricanes or floods, fires, or anything. We need to be able to do this ourselves. We talk about people not enforcing the Constitution. Well, we've not done it in Texas with our own Texas state Constitution. It's been just easy and lazy to let the federal government come in and do it. But that hasn't worked well. We don't have control, and we need to reassert our control to use our things that are set up. We have it in place. We have these troops and forces in place to do these things. We just need to use them.
Yes, I agree. And what would help is if we were allowed our Second Amendment right to carry and bear arms, we Texans and other people would defend themselves a lot better.
Yeah, I have to say, Governor Abbott has not been good on constitutional carry. It was the number one legislative priority of his party, the Republican Party. He didn't even put it on the call for the special sessions, which he could. So there are many ways that I'm different from Greg Abbott. The number one way is I will enforce the Constitution. I will act like the head of a sovereign state, and I will fix these problems. So I asked your listeners to look me up, Kathie Glass. That's KathieGlass, KathieGlass.org. Check me out on Facebook, Kathie Glass for Texas Governor. Follow me on Twitter, Kathie for Texas, Kathie. And there's many ways you can follow me. And if you're in Texas, you can vote for me. If not, you can send me money.
That's right. And because we need to hit all states, not just Texas, New York. Every state is being affected by our overreaching government right now. And it takes every single citizen standing up and fighting for our liberty. And I just want to thank you again, Kathie Glass, for all the wonderful work you're doing. You're going to win, and we're going to kick butt and take our liberty back for the people. Thank you so much, Kathie, for coming to Savvy Business Radio.
Thank you very much. Ask me on again. I had a great time.
You betcha.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network, celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina at SavvyBusinessRadio.com.